I am Morpheus, the King of Dreams. Welcome to Dreamland. Actually, 'tis I, multi-voice reviewer. I have many voices, but one opinion. And today, there is a TV series that I did enjoy. It came out on Netflix. And I was surprised that they let it appear. I was surprised that Netflix decided to do the series of it. After what I heard that all the DC superheroes always ended up on end up in on HBO Max, because now I heard that HBO Max owned all the DC series, but there are still a few on Netflix, like Supergirl I've been enjoying lately. But right now, I'm going to be talking about a series. It was created by none other than Neil Gaiman. Now, for those of you who don't know who Neil Gaiman is, he was one of the most very interesting comic book writers. He wrote tons of books, and also a lot of comic books as well. But the greatest one that he did of all time, that it was under development for so long, and they finally got it made, is none other than the Sandman. And of course, Neil Gaiman wrote the first Sandman comic book series. No, not the not Willie Dodds, but Sandman. But I'm talking about the graphic novel. But if you ask me, I wish I had the omnibus, because I love the look of this book. And of course, one thing I do remember that I heard, Oddity, who does a lot of audiobooks, and it's part of Amazon, they did an audiobook series of the Sandman. And if you're wondering who does the voice of the characters, James McAvoy did Morpheus, the Sandman. And of course, the lovely and very attractive Kate Dennings as Death. I love Kate Dennings. One thing I like about her is that she brings a lot of sexuality and funniness together. She has a mixture of being both sexy and funny. Have you ever seen her on Two Broke Girls? But how the story goes, it all starts when it shows you the dream world. And who ruled the dream world is none other than Morpheus, aka Dream the Endless. And a lot of people are kind of hinting in the comics that that Morpheus is actually one of the Greek gods, Morpheus, who is the King of Dream as well. And of course, he's a member of a family who calls himself the Endless. But throughout the whole story, you start to realize that the dream was about ready to capture this one dream being who can cross over between the reality world and the dream realm. And he goes by the name of Corythian. Now, for those of you who don't know who Corythian is, he's a dream being, except he's a serial killer. And one thing about him, he wears these sunglasses to cover his eyes. And the reason why he covers his eyes is because he has teeth in his eyelids. So he kills people and take out their eyes so he can eat them. I know, that's kind of gruesome. And of course, assisting Morpheus is, of course, Luciana. Now, Luciana is supposed to be the librarian, but that's a character that they gender swap, because in the comic book, it was Lucian, the librarian, who was actually a host from an anthology comics called Weird Mystery Tales. Now, our story continues. Takes place in 1916 in Witchcross, UK. There was a guy who calls himself the Magus named Dr. Roderick Burgess. Now, the only reason why... he's called the Magus because he's doing magic, and all he's trying to do... He was trying to summon death because he is so hell-bent on trying to get his son back. His first son was his pride and joy. So he was so determined on getting his first son back, even though he has a second son who goes by the name of he also has a second son, and he kind of treats him like a servant. And even though he does things to trying to please his dad, he just doesn't give him any compliments. He just goes like, "Buffoon, you would have shattered the glass," instead of saying, "Well done, son." And he was having like a huge gathering, and his son told everybody that they need to leave because the house is filled with enough people. In 1926, there was a young woman who goes by the name of Ethel Cripps. She welcomed herself in, and she slept with the Magus, and she got pregnant. And he wanted that baby that she has terminated. So she ran, stole all of his money, and also everything that the Magus took from the Sandman. Because he was trying to summon death so he can bring his son back, but he accidentally got Morpheus instead. He got Morpheus and he imprisoned him, demanding for his son back. But Morpheus hasn't said a single word to him because he wanted him to talk so he can make a bargain, which Morpheus cannot bring somebody back from the dead. You can't bring people back from the dead. It's impossible. If you can bring people back from the dead, there is a result. They either become a zombie or a vampire or something worse. Have you ever seen Pet Sematary? But anyway, after Edith took all the valuables and took off, she gave the sack of sand, which would take Morpheus to different places and also can knock people out into slumber. And of course she also took the helmet, and she did some kind of sacrificial ritual. She gave the Morpheus's helmet to one of the demons, and the demon gave her an amulet of protection. And also she gave but she kept the red ruby of dreams, which I'm going to tell you about the ruby later. But anyway, years went by, and the Magus's son accidentally killed him when he hit the back of his head with glass, and it kind of shattered his skull. And then years later, his second son met a guy and had a relationship with him until he got really old. And they messed up the imprisonment on the ground, and therefore Morpheus become free. In the present time. And as he returned to the dream world, well, this is what happened to the dream world. And of course, Ethel, she kept the necklace of protection for a long time, so she was aging very, very slow. And every time when somebody tries to kill her, it will reverse back to them. So if anybody shoots you with a gun, the bullet will get to them instead of you. And of course, the son she had is going to become John D. And I'm going to tell you about John D. soon. But after noticing how destroyed his dream world was, everybody left and everything, and he has to go to two people who are still in the dream realm, and it's none other than Cain and Abel. And for those of you who are going to be asking me, yes, they are the same Cain and Abel from the biblical era. Cain, the first murderer, and Abel, the first victim. Except and one thing, if you don't know about them in the comics, they were actually horror hosts themselves from a DC series of comic books, anthology comics called The House of Mystery and The House of Secrets. And they also have a pet gargoyle named Godry. Now, Morpheus showed up, and one thing he wanted is, of course, Godry, their pet gargoyle. He has to sacrifice him in order to sustain his power. And that's what he did. And even though it broke Cain and Abel's heart, Cain decided to kill his son Abel. But don't worry, they're dream people. So no matter how many times he kills him, he does come back. And Morpheus has to go meet the Fates. Now, for those of you who don't know who the Fates are three witches. There is Kenthy, Mildred, and Mordred. And for those of you who don't know who they are, the three witches are actually other horror hosts in the DC Comics, and the anthology comics that they used to host is, of course, the Witching Hour comics. But of course, one thing about the Fates, these three witches, one thing about them is you have to ask them 3 questions. But every answer they give them is actually a riddle. So if you try to answer their riddle, they cannot answer you. You had to figure it out by yourself. So they gave him 3 riddles in order to find his relics. So after he talked to the Fates, he decided he found an egg, a gargoyle egg. Since he felt bad for killing Godry, they gave Cain and Abel a gargoyle egg, and it hatches. Cain decided to name it Goldie, while Abel decided to call it Irving. So they have a certain disagreement, and of course, as always, Cain killed him again. But he comes back. Gosh, he's like those slasher killers, except they don't kill people. Every time you kill him, they comes back. Kill him, come back. Kill him, come back. I mean, where are they going to go? Detroit? So the first thing he needs to get is this. He needs to get the bag of sand. The bag of sand is owned by Constantine. No, not the TV series Constantine. No, not the movie Constantine, although I have seen that movie, and one thing I gotta say about it, the movie was good, but Keanu Reeves, he just played Constantine his own way, and Shia LaBeouf was horrendous in that movie. But the Constantine that he's going to be dealing with is, of course, Joanna Constantine, played by the lovely British actress that I have a soft spot for, Jenna Coleman. Jenna. Can't tell you how much I do love you ever since Doctor Who. I don't care if you are married. One day you'll be mine. But I know they kind of gender swap on that character, because I know in the original comics, the original Constantine was supposed to be in the series, but since there's a TV series of Constantine in that one movie, that's when they decided that that it should be Joanna Constantine. And Joanna Constantine is in the comics, except she's supposed to be a demon hunter in the 16th century. But I guess they kind of made her immortal and continued on fighting demons in the present time. And of course they come across Mad Hattie. Now, Mad Hattie is more like a prophecy kind of woman and told Joanna Constantine that she's going to meet the King of Dreams, the Sandman. And of course, one of his, oh yeah, that's right. In the beginning, one of his ravens, who goes by the name of Jessame, got killed by the mage's son. So now he gets himself a new raven, which is Matthew Cable the Raven. That's right. It's the same Matthew Cable from Swamp Thing. What happened to him is that he went completely mad after he left the Louisiana, and of course meeting a couple of people in Doom Patrol. And when he went off on his own, he went completely bonkers because of the madness that he suffered. So he pretty much ended his life, but now he came back as the Raven. And of course, Joanna Constantine, she knows where the bag of sand is at. His girlfriend named Rachel has it. So they went to Rachel's apartment, and here's the problem. The bag of sand is killing her. She's starting to look like a drug addict, all skinny, skeleton-like. The bag of sand is killing him. So Morpheus has to let her pass away. Even though Constantine refuses, he just had to do it. So he just gave her a perfect dream that she can rest in peace in. And her dream is spending a whole day with Constantine. So, Constantine told Morpheus to take good care of your friend, Matthew, because he got a lot to learn. Which he does. So now the next world he needs to get his helmet since Ethel traded the helmet for the amulet of protection. So now the helmet is in hell. So now Morpheus has to go to hell. He finally did, because he's going to deal with Lucifer Morningstar. No, not that Lucifer, although I have seen the first season of that series, and I gotta say, I do like the show so far. Heck, I can even do the impression of Lucifer. Hello? So, tell me, what is it that you truly desire? I think I'm pretty good. But anyway, it's actually Lucifer Morningstar in the Sandman series. Another gender swap. Which, I gotta say, the actress from Game of Thrones who played Lucifer, she did a pretty good job. Not that bad of a job at all. She was really good. But he also came across, when Morpheus was in hell, he was walking towards where Lucifer is at, and he come across Nada. Now, for those of you who wants to know who Nada is, she was a mortal from Africa. And Morpheus, he had like a forbidden love towards her. But somehow she did the most unspeakable thing in Africa, so that's why she ended up in hell. And she's still been hoping and praying that she meets Morpheus once again. But now's not the time. Breaks your heart, doesn't it? And of course they come across Lucifer's right-hand man, Mazikeen. Well, right-hand woman. to be precise, because Masakine is a woman in the comics. So, and it turns out that the only demon who has his helmet is, of course, Jazazine. I hope I got his name right. Jazazine. He's actually a Duke of Hell who kept the helmet, and he will not give Morpheus the helmet unless he challenge him for a fight. And so the deal's a deal. If Morpheus wins, he'll get his helmet back. But if the demon wins, then he will be his slave for an eternity. And of course, Morpheus accepts his challenge. So, but here's the thing. The demon didn't choose himself on the fight. He chooses his master, Lucifer. So they did a little game of imagination. One said became a wolf, the other one became a hunter and a horse, the other one became a snake, the other one became a crow, and then the other one became the world of life, but the other one became a meteor that destroys things, and Morpheus becomes the galaxy, the universe, but Lucifer becomes darkness in the universe that destroys the universe. And Morpheus almost gave up, but he forgot one thing, one of the tricks of all. He became hope, the dream, the hope, the one that pretty much stops the nothingness. So therefore Lucifer is defeated, and the helmet was his. So, he finally left hell. I say that Morpheus just went through hell and back. Well, at the same time, he was trying to get the ruby, and the ruby was owned by none other than John Dee. And for those of you who don't know who John Dee is, in the comic books, he's a supervillain, and John Dee was known as Dr. Destiny. Now, for those of you who don't know who Dr. Destiny is actually an evil, mystical person who uses the Ruby of Dreams to let their deepest, dark hallucinations become reality. And of course, John Dee grew up with lies. So, I mean, his mother only lied to him to protect him, but he doesn't like lying. So, he ends up in a diner, and all of a sudden, everybody starts being honest towards one another. And here's the thing. Telling the truth is not a good thing, especially with honesty, because sometimes honesty can kill people, especially if you be brutally honest to people. That's why white lies is a good thing. So it can make people feel better. Like, for instance, if I was married and my wife is pregnant and she feels depressed and down and asks me how I look, I would say, you still look great. You're hot. You're glowing. If I told her she looks like an obese cow, it would have killed her. So, that's why white lies is important. But he made everybody felt their honest desire, and everybody just ended up killing each other. So Morpheus and as he has everybody ended up killing each other in a diner, he was also bringing about the end of the world, a great disaster in the world. So Morpheus himself showed up, and John Dee tries to stop him with the ruby, but the ruby shattered. He destroyed the ruby, and it was the only way to stop all this madness that John Dee was creating. So now, Morpheus puts him in a coma. And after he left, one of his siblings of the Endless is none other than Desire. And I'll explain Desire along the way. Now he meets his sister, which is, of course, Death. Now, I am familiar with Death in the DC Universe, and I mean, I do like the actress who plays Death, Kirby Holloway Baptiste. I mean, she did a pretty good job playing Death, because in the comics, Death looks like a teenage girl, and even though she hates doing her job, letting people die, but she's optimistic. So even though she's reluctant on taking people into the afterlife after they die, but she has to do it anyway in order to keep the world going. So anyway, she showed up towards Morpheus and told him he would have told her that he was in prison. He said he didn't want to disturb her. He didn't want to bother her. And she finally started cheering her up and kind of see the point of view. After after what he'd been through back then in the 1800s, he should not be, too angry and vengeful towards the human race. Because there's only a few horrible people out of a whole bunch of decent people in the world. And of course, she went around the world and guiding people who died, which it was the most emotional scene I ever saw. I mean, I was in tears in that episode. But anyway, one thing that Morpheus remembered was back in 1389. 1389, he meets this guy who goes by the name of Robert Godling. Now, for those of you who don't know who Robert Godling is, he's immortal because he says that he will refuse to die. He would rather be immortal. So, Morpheus put that to the test. Every 100 years, they will meet together in a pub. So, every 100 years, they always meet together in a pub, talking and drinking. All on and on. And of course, Morpheus bumped into William Shakespeare, the greatest playwright of all times, and he gave him some tips about his creativity in stories, because Morpheus sensed that William Shakespeare would do great things, which we all know what he did. Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, Taming of the Shrew. Tons of stories that I just cannot keep track of what William Shakespeare had done. But he did a lot of great stories, and he is pretty good. But anyway, years have went by, and they come across Joanna Constantine in the 1700s. Now, back in the 1600s, Robert had been through hell because most of his family died. People tried to execute him for being a witch, because the UK did have witch trials back in the 1600s before Salem, Massachusetts starts accusing their people for witches. But sadly, during the time when, in the 1800s, when Morpheus was in prison, Robert kept showing up in the pub, waiting for him, making him think that he probably rejected him or something, until it turns out that the old pub that he kept going into is going out of business. So he decided to own a new pub, a new bar, called The New Inn. And after all those years, Morpheus, in the present time, finally showed up to the New Inn. And him and Robert decided to catch up old times. I had a lot of good friends in the past, and there are times I like to catch up to them and make up for old times myself. But the biggest story of all is the biggest important one of all. Now, Desire, he's one of the Endless who represent Desire, because he is even though he's a guy, he looks all feminine, and he pretty much represents what his name goes, desire. Lust and everything. And there is this girl who goes by the name of Rose Walker. Now, Rose Walker, she had a bad experience in her life because her parents had a divorce, and she has a brother named Jed, which she loves very, very much. And sadly, her mother and father are getting a divorce, and the father, out of spite, he decided to keep his son Jed while his wife go along with Rose. So now, years later, she's trying to get her brother back with the help of this lovely lady called Lita. Now, one thing I know about Lita, she's a daughter of Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor. And she lost her husband named Hector Hill. Hector is the son of Hawkman and Hawkgirl. But sadly, Lita lost him in the past. But every time when she falls asleep, she always dreams about him, and always talking to her in her dreams. And much to Rose's surprise, she discovered that she has a great-great-grandmother named Unity Kendall. And Unity Kendall, turns out she was one of the children who got into a really bad coma while Morpheus was in prison. Because in the beginning, when Morpheus was in prison, everybody either sleepwalks or go into comas or unable to sleep, period. It would create quite a disaster, and Unity was one of the kids who ended up in a coma. And it turns out that Rose is actually a vortex, because every time when she dreams, she goes into the dream world. She can travel between the reality world and the dream world. So she's trying her best to get her brother back while having help from Lita, and with the support of her great-grandmother, Unity. While at the same time, there's a group of serial killers, which I call collectors. They were a huge fan of the Corinthian, and they want him to be their honored guest for their convention. And he was more than welcome. While at the same time, Rose saw these three witches, the saints, warning her about the dream world and the reality world that she's going through. While at the same time, you have Marvin the Pumpkinhead, voiced by Mark Hamill. That's right. Luke Skywalker and Joker himself, Mark Hamill, did the voice of Marvin the Pumpkinhead, who is actually one of the janitors in the library in the Dreamworld. And of course, Unity told Rose to go to Florida in Cape Kennedy, where there's a group of people who would help her out along the way. And they come across Gilbert, played by Stephen Fry. Now, there's something about Gilbert that I would tell you about later. And of course, turns out that there is a being who goes by the name of Gult. Gult is actually a nightmare. She's supposed to be a nightmare. And what she's doing, because Jed, after his father died, he got him adopted by a foster parents, but the father was very strict. He wanted to keep him in the basement, and it turns out that he might be very abusive towards his wife. So she only does what he tells her to do. But every time when Jed dreams, Gult makes him become a superhero. So Jed dresses up as Garrett Sanford Sandman. So every time when he dreams, he dresses up as a superhero. And a little known fact, if you looked at the headquarters where it showed the faces of all the characters in the screen, those are faces of all the supervillains from the DC universe. So it's kind of interesting that they're trying to make a connection with the DC universe. And all of a sudden, the Corinthian found out where Jed lives, and he killed the foster parents and took Jed with him. Now, he ain't going to kill him, but he's going to take him to a hotel where they're going to have a cereal convention. And it's not a breakfast cereal convention, it's a convention of serial killers. And there are characters in the comics who are serial killers. Like, there is the Nimrod, who loves to cut up people and keep their skin to make clothing out of them. There's the good doctor, who is a surgeon who likes cutting people up while they're alive. And of course, the other one, which pretty much disgusts me a lot, they call him Funland. Now, one thing I know about Funland, he's a child molesting murderer, and they call him Funland because he kills kids in theme parks. And you know, he was once one of my main man Batman villains when he went to one of the theme parks in Gotham. But they all are having the serial convention where all the serial killers are at. And Rose and Gilbert went there to find Jed. And much of my surprise, there is this guy who calls himself the Boogeyman, which Corinthian knew that Boogeyman, the serial killer who calls himself the Boogeyman, was drowned in Louisiana. And according to the comic books, he was drowned thanks to Swamp Thing, my favorite superhero. So pretty much the Boogeyman was drowned down on the bayou. I wanted to bring that back. But anyway, throughout the whole story, they figured out that he was a fake, so they killed him. And now and of course it turns out that since Rose is the Vortex, she is destroying the dream world when she's still around. So Morpheus has no choice but decided to kill her. But it becomes a showdown between Morpheus, aka Dream, and Corinthian finally defeated. Dream finally defeated Corinthian, and he told those serial killers, collectors, he made them all feel bad at what they did. And after they woke up, they all went to their cars. Some of them called the cops to report their crimes, while others committed suicide. Good riddance. But anyway, Lita and Jed... Lita, she got pregnant in her dream and she has a child. Now, a little known fact, guys. One thing I know about Lita's son. Now, even though Morpheus got rid of Hector, he said he's going to come back for the baby, which it frightened Lita. But here's a little known fact, guys. Lita's child is going to be Daniel Hall. And one thing I know about Daniel Hall, he's going to be the next Endless and replace Morpheus in the future comics. And Rose went to Dreamland, and all of her friends kept disappearing one by one. It's because of her doing. As long as she's still alive, the dream world's going to be destroyed. So Morpheus has no choice. He has to kill her. But her grandmother, Unity, showed up and found her book about her history. And of course, Gilbert himself, turns out that he is Fiddler Green, a land. So he was a land in the dream world So now he's going to let himself go and become a land in the dream world. He sacrificed himself. And of course, Unity showed up along with Luciana. And turns out that she was the Vortex before she gave it to her daughter and then gave it to her granddaughter. But now she wants to take it back, and it turns out what made them become Vortex is the crystal heart that they have. And of course she said that she became the Vortex ever since in her dream she slept with a man with golden eyes. The man with golden eyes, that's Desire. So that's how she became the Vortex, because she slept with Desire. And now Rose becomes a writer in her future because she decided to write a book about her entire adventures, even though she kind of made Morpheus the bad guy. But they say in the future it's going to be a huge hit. So she got her book published and become a pretty sensational writer. And of course, Morpheus, he killed Galt because of betraying him, because she was supposed to be a nightmare. She ain't supposed to give people good dreams. But now he realized his mistakes and decided to bring her back. Meanwhile, in hell, Lucifer was so pissed about her being defeated by Morpheus that one of the demons goes by the name of Azrael. Azrael decided it's time for the demons to wage war in the dream realm. And even though Lucifer doesn't like Azrael, he is right. It's time to bring war upon the dream realm. And that's what they left at the end in Season 1. I hope that the Season 2 turns out great, because the show was awesome. I love it. I mean, as I would say from one of the critics, oh my gosh, this is the greatest series I've ever seen in my life! And sorry for spoiling it for those of you who never see it. My advice to you is stop this video and watch it yourself before you started watching this. And one thing I'm expecting for the second season to appear is they probably introduce the rest of the Endless. I mean, they already showed Desire, but there was another Endless that showed in the series, Despair. But I'm also hoping for the other ones, like, I hope they're going to show Delirium, Destruction, and Destiny. Now, there was a couple, and believe it or not, the Sandman is a part of the DC Universe. So, in the comics, they kind of left it out for some reason. I mean, there was the Sandman, Swamp Thing, Hal Jordan the Green Lantern, Mr. Miracle, one of the New Gods, Jason Blood and Etrigan the Demon, Martian Manhunter, Lex Luthor, and the kind of forgotten one, Prez Redrick. He's supposed to be a superhero president. And of course, Element Girl. And that's my kind of gripe on it, because they should have introduced all those characters in it. But that's just a little itch I do have, a little meaningless fanboy gripe on it. But all in all, it is a good story. And this is my review of The Sandman for the day, and I cannot wait if Neil Gaiman decides to do second season. So, for those of you who enjoyed this video, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe. And I have to say, this review is not real, folks. This review is just a dream. And I'm going to do exactly what Morpheus did. Time for you guys to wake up.